Welcome to the Athletes in Motion podcast, from race to recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey Tom, how are you?
I'm great, Kenny. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Wow, we've got a great show today. We have two wonderful guests, Joe Fleenor and Faye Yates from Team Magic, and to talk about a lot of triathlon stuff. We talk about races and everything that goes along with that. So
Welcome.
welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
We are super happy to be here.
Yeah, great to see you guys. Thanks for inviting.
We got a lot of great history here in the Middle Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky areas with Team Magic and Above the Fold. So, Joe, why don't you give us a little bit of a background and history on your background and Above the Fold, and tell us about that. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so I come from a sport event production background. I went to the University of Tennessee, majoring in sport management and business, and left school there and immediately started working with the United States Tennis Association. So I have a really strong background in tennis, especially when it comes to like producing large-scale tennis tournaments, tennis leagues, and things like that. And long story short, over that time, I wanted to get out of the nonprofit space. Wanted to get into the real money-generating space of things. And I've always had a passion for starting my own business, but really never knew what I wanted to do with that, what it was going to look like, how to get involved in that. And over time, I just got more and more involved in running and cycling and swimming and ultimately triathlon. And we can get into more of the history of it all. But from that, I started the River Bluff Triathlon, which was a race in Middle Tennessee that took place for many, many years that a previous company used to manage. That race was no longer on their calendar anymore. And that was an opportunity for me to kind of launch something and get my new business started off the ground with that one race.
Awesome.
So I started that as essentially a side hustle gig while I was still working full time. Set it up as Above the Fold, and the rest is history. That was 6 years ago. And then over the years, we slowly started to bring on additional races and grow all those races so that I could eventually leave my cush full-time, high-paying corporate job with benefits and go all in on Above the Fold. Yeah. And here we are today.
Cool. So you came at it from an athlete perspective, right? You were
a mediocre recreational weekend warrior athlete.
Like the rest of us.
Like the rest of us.
Like everybody pretty much, yeah.
Awesome. So, Faye.
Yeah, so my background, a little bit different. I have an engineering degree from Vanderbilt, so I went out into the corporate world for a little while, working in the industry for about 5 years. And while doing that, so I grew up athletic, fast pitch softball, basketball, always, as soon as I was walking, I was running. So it was one of those, team sport type things. So as I, got out into the real world, those team sports didn't suit me as much anymore as an adult. So I got into running, doing some marathons and triathlons I lived in Birmingham, Alabama, and it was there was a couple of really neat chicks that were way ahead of their time. And they had actually a triathlon shop called the Magic City Tri Shop in Birmingham.
Nice.
And I got introduced to them. And so the name of Magic City Tri Shop had a team of people that helped them produce races to promote their shop. And I became one of those people. And those people were, guess what? Called Team Magic.
Team Magic.
Surprise.
So I moved away to Pittsburgh to the corporate office for U.S. Steel, which is the company I worked for, and went away for a couple of years. And when I came back, during that time, I was just, already figuring out, there's more out there for me, I think, than working in the corporate world. And I come from a background of, my father was an entrepreneur, worked for himself. My brother and sister are more in line for that are older. I'm the youngest, and it's just in our blood, I think. And so I was kind of like Joe was saying, it's like I always knew I wanted to have my own business. And so I approached one of the owners of the Tri Shop and said, I think you can put on races for real, because they were basically just putting on some little pop-up things.
More to
we're
promote
talking about early
shop,
90s, right?
Thing, yeah.
This is really early in triathlon.
Yeah.
So I just said, I think I'm ready to make a move. And I was, obviously very young, my early 20s. And I made a move out, did some consulting work to be able to eat more than peanut butter and jelly for a while. And Therese Bynum was the partner from the Tri Shop that I joined business with. She's now since retired as of this year.
Okay.
And we just started in Birmingham and started expanding. I was ready to, make a move in early 2000s back to Tennessee. So I'm from this area, went to Vanderbilt, and we expanded the races then to Tennessee. So that's how Team Magic grew out of the Birmingham kind of mom and pop into 2 states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So over those years, there's been a lot of changes to triathlon, right? We've gone through, and let's go pre-COVID, just as we were dealing with a lot of the swim issues. That was probably the biggest change that was happening on how we were handling the swim starts for athletes. What were you seeing here in the sprint? I mean, most focus was on Ironman distance, long distance courses. What were you dealing with on the short course, on the sprint and Olympic distance when it came to the swim starts?
Yeah, here's the deal. And we, a long time ago, and I'm not sure what year, we transitioned to this, we started interval starts to be safer way before it became an issue. So we actually caught a lot of heat for it.
Did you at that point? Yeah,
a lot of competitive athletes were like, "This is not cool."
Yeah.
What made them think it was not cool? Just because
they don't know who they're racing.
Oh, I see. So it was a time
all
issue.
about
So they don't know if they're
competition.
ahead or behind.
It was all about gauging.
Yeah.
I'm here to race other people. I'm not just racing myself.
Yeah.
So we caught a lot of heat, but it's part of it was us for safety, and honestly, part of it was just race venues that we had. There just wasn't a great place to start as a wave start either. So it just fell into place. So we were really leaders in that, and a lot of people started to follow because it does feel safer. And we tout ourselves as a very beginner friendly company, and it is. While it's exciting to tell people, "Hey, I started in one of those mass start swims," the reality is, no one unless they're a competitive swimmer really likes it. I mean, okay, I shouldn't say no one.
Yeah, it's a wash machine.
Yeah.
There are a few people that think it's way cool.
Yeah.
But most people are very, very intimidated by it.
It's
in fact, it causes so many panic attacks.
Yeah.
So we felt like it also eased that part because it's a totally different race.
Yeah. When we talk about getting people into the sport, that
yeah.
usually is one of the barriers because it scares them.
It really
Just
is.
hearing about it scares them.
Yeah.
Is that what you find? Is that sort of like people want to do it when they come like casually talk to you like, hey, I run Team Magic or I run Above the Fold and I'm thinking about triathlons. Is it usually, I can't swim? I mean, is that the first thing or
95% of the time?
Really?
I mean, it is really, to me, that's the biggest barrier.
98% of the time.
I mean, the only other barrier are from younger people maybe that say, I don't have a bike or, I can't afford.
Yeah.
The other thing is the price, I can't afford that. But that's that's a small crowd.
Sure.
It's a very small crowd.
Yeah, recreational swimming, most kids grow up swimming, so they have a background in swimming. But then when you get to high school and college, you lose that. And then many adults that come back into the sport and want to do a triathlon, they haven't swam in 20 years in most cases. Yeah. And they don't even know where to even begin that process.
Yeah.
So that is the biggest barrier. And then when you add in the element of open water, and then you're starting with a group of 50 to 100 people at the same time, it's a scary thing for me. And I've been in the sport for 10 plus years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I started triathlon when I was in my 40s, and my idea of swimming was swimming to the pool bar, right?
That's exactly right.
And kind of farting around when you jump out of the boat, kind of stuff, and then suddenly you have to do laps and things. It takes a bit.
Right. And you're probably ahead of a lot of people because the big thing is, that open water is intimidating. If you've never, I grew up on a lake, right? So not being able to see, underneath the water, that's not a fear for me.
Yeah.
But I have a true fear. I'm a little bit claustrophobic, so I don't like people, get my space.
Closing in on you.
In on me.
Yeah.
So it's not that I was a lifeguard. I'm a completely confident swimmer. But, I mean, lakes don't bother me. But I have unzipped a wetsuit in a panic attack in the water before. That's how, panicked I was that I had to get that off my neck then in the middle of the water. That was better than any other option for me. So,
well, yeah, I mean, 120 people on a mass start when you're getting kicked in the face, you could be the best swimmer, right? You're holding your line, you're doing your thing, and you got somebody that's first time they're in the open water, they're going, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. So they're going diagonal and they're just grabbing everything, right? So you're getting kicked, you're getting hit. I mean, those mass starts are like, sometimes they can be fun in a weird sort of way, right? Because you're starting with a bunch of people, and once everybody cleans out a little bit, first couple 100 yards, it's okay. But yeah, it's you just know you're going to get kicked. Get ready, right? I mean, matter of fact, aren't there practice swims specifically for that?
Yeah, I actually, a lot of the master swims that I coach, we actually take the pool lines out. We'll take all the the lane barriers out and have everybody swim together. We'll have, even with the lanes set up, we'll have 3 or 4 people stuffed in the lane. We'll have people swim past them, swim over them, so that we can do it in a controlled environment. We'll swim behind them and tap their legs so that they get used to being touched and something like that, which they're not used to when they're actually out there.
Swimming around a buoy also is really important too, especially in crowds, because that's everybody converges to the narrow line. And that's a big thing that I learned when I was training for my first Ironman, was the concept of swimming around a buoy with like 17 people on top of you. That's a thing. That's a weird, stressful thing.
So as you moving along sort of throughout the years, right, swimming's becoming a more sensitive thing. That's the barrier to get people in. How did you react to sort of, did you increase the amount of, other than just not mass starts, but just wave starts? Was there more boats out there? Did you try to get kayaks? I mean, was there ways that you can help sort of ease that tension, or was it to look for water that's a little bit more friendly? I mean, is that a consideration? I know that sounds weird, friendly water.
No, that's not weird at all, actually. I mean, you definitely look for, when we have quite a few river swims. We have some urban races, right? Yeah. So what we want, ideally, is to have a point-to-point swim in the river.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Hopefully downstream.
When I race, which I try to still do sometimes, I mean, that's where I want a downriver swim. So that's mainly because I don't necessarily find myself going to the pool very often or going to open water to practice. I figure I can get away with it.
There you go.
So, I mean, you look for a body of water that's forgiving. You don't want to be in one of those that when the wind comes up, it's always white capping.
Yeah.
If you can avoid that. But honestly, when you're looking for race venues, there aren't, it's pretty limited what you have anyway. Yeah. So you have to work kind of what's available. But that is 100% safety of the swim. Well, safety everywhere. Safety swim and bike are huge. Safety of the swim is so important. And I think it's finding those places. What can we do to find a point-to-point? Working, it's just thinking outside the box. What can we do versus swimming upstream versus downstream? And then lakes, the same thing. Is it something that, we're confident there aren't, blow-up winds that cause problems? I don't know if everybody remembers that story. Every year that happened out, was it in Ironman, Utah, where the wind blew up?
Yes.
My business partner was there.
70.3, yeah. I did that race.
Did you really? Yeah, my buddy did that race. We were there.
The people that were starting after me were swimming further because the buoy was...
Yeah, people were swimming backwards.
Yeah.
When you have a town called Hurricane on the shore of a lake, it's red flag.
It's red flag.
Is Hurricane?
Hurricane? Yes, you got to pronounce it correctly.
Right.
But still, that's...
Yeah.
Red flag.
So the body of water is important, and I think it's also doing what we do, the interval starts, and letting people give people 3 seconds apart and give them a second to get their space.
Yeah.
I think
and then in terms of like swim support on the river or lake with kayaks and boats and things like that are out there, it's you got to have the quantity of boats and safety vessels out there, but then you also have to plan. So like if something does happen, that everybody that's in the water, whether they're a volunteer or with the fire department or Coast Guard or a lifeguard, they need to know like what next. So it's imperative that there's a plan in place for them to know what to do should they have to rescue a swimmer.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing, just the logistics of setting up a triathlon, right? Because we had some folks, and we're going to talk about COVID in a second, but one of the challenges about races like this, you can't just put a dome up like they're doing in basketball and you can just isolate everybody because it's out in counties, it's out on public roads. I'm always curious about sort of the logistics on setting these things up. I mean, from a permitting perspective, to your point, it's not just, hey, we got to set up cones and call it a day. You have to look at safeties, you have to look at volunteers. Could you just sort of walk through sort of those big areas that when you go to set up a race, kind of like you moved from Alabama here to Tennessee, what were those things that you had to kind of keep in mind when you were setting up a race like this?
Right. So, the races we started with in Alabama were in rural areas or in a state park.
Uh-huh.
Totally different. Doesn't mean there's not safety measures that you have to account for. Obviously you do. But the water that we used was, water such that we had great relationships with the people there. It was very manageable, calm water.
Yeah.
That's prior to the Gulf race, which is a different ordeal in itself. But when we moved to Tennessee and moved to race Music City downtown, that changes everything because you're in the Cumberland River. So we were dealing with, people worrying about water quality because it's you're in a downtown area.
Sure.
And of course,
Yeah.
we did not start that race until they'd redone the downtown system.
Yep.
Good.
And the council people swim across the river. Yeah. So, I think when you get into an urban environment, it changes everything. You then need all these different permits.
Yeah.
Which rightly so, you should have them. And not just the permits, but the communication between all of those bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're dealing with, prior to having a point-to-point swim at Music City, for example, we had the Olympic swim had to swim upstream a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to know that the Corps of Engineers are slowing the water at the right time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Super important.
Yeah.
And that they are actually able to communicate if something changes with that to the people that we have on the water. And we have no one on the water for that race that's not Swiftwater certified. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so
interesting.
there's certain places where that's really important.
Mhm.
We have a race that we've traditionally had in Montgomery, Alabama. Again, downriver swim. We start from a riverboat, and now we start from a riverboat from Music City, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
We start from a riverboat there, and the city will not allow any kayaks on the water. No personal volunteers. They have to manage everything.
Oh, wow.
So they have all their Swiftwater rescue people managing that swim. So that's the other thing you deal with in addition to permits is what are the local people, what the local, support.
Yeah.
Jurisdictions
Yes,
of the
I see.
water, what do they require?
And then you cross jurisdictions as the race goes on. You have to deal with all of those organizations as well.
Once
right?
you get outside of the swim, you definitely have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because on the bike course, it's multiple counties you get
cross
to
into
deal
different-
with. You get to,
It depends on the course.
Yeah.
How much is that driven? Is the course driven by those permitting issues, or is it driven? I mean, how do you balance between some neighborhoods are going to hate you for that, some neighborhoods are going to love you for it? Some counties, are the sheriffs are going to be like, yeah, but we got a thing going on. I mean, how much is that course dictated by sort of those outside pressures versus, hey, this would be a great flat course, or this would be a great fun course to do? Or did I just open up a Pandora's box of like crap?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Congratulations.
and I'll take this and jump in, Faye, but I think a lot of it is, as race directors, we are constantly looking to figure out what would be the safest, most enjoyable course for the athletes. And then we pick that course, and then
modify from there.
And then we determine if that works with the municipalities that we're working with, okay? Because they really have final say on that. And as she was mentioning earlier, there's a lot of people that make those decisions, whether it's the city or the county or TDOT or, ADOT, whatever ADOT is.
Yeah.
But there's lots of people that help you determine if that course is manageable for what you're trying to do. So yes, we have the general idea, but really it's up to them on approving whether that's going to work for
And then
them.
it modifies based off of that and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but it's modified based on what they can manage and what's in keeping the community happy. Because if your community, and that's not just for them, that's for us.
Yeah.
We want to feel welcome in a community.
Absolutely.
As soon as we're not welcome in a community, we don't want to be there, because then what happens is the racers don't feel welcome.
Yeah.
And they don't want to come back because they don't feel welcome. So there's a lot behind the scenes that goes on.
There's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
There's races like River Bluff. It's our race here in Ashland City that we've done. And prior to Above the Fold starting that race, they ran into an issue one year where they had planned their race on the same day as the annual duck blind drawing. And the duck blind drawing in the world of hunting in Middle Tennessee is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, thousands of people come to that duck blind, and that duck blind drawing is in Cheatham County, which is where the race takes place. Well, it was taking place the same morning as River Bluff Triathlon, and so you got a lot of bikes on the street, closing the street, a lot of traffic coming into the street with, rifles on the back of the trucks. Those are things you want to try to avoid. So there's a lot of those logistical things.
Yeah.
And we can even get into more later on about the Music City Triathlon that we just launched, and about all the logistics around that bike course
Sure.
and Nissan Stadium that are going on this year with that. So
Yeah. And on the run course, do you make it hilly on purpose just to piss me off, or is it something?
it gives
you
it a little
guys-
character.
There it goes.
I like that. That's the best
Character.
description I've
Well,
heard.
that's actually a legitimate
like
question on that. Is some of these courses are going to be short courses, which means you're going to have a lot more beginners. You're going to have a lot of people on variety of equipment and all. It's sort of like as you get to mid and longer courses, people tend to be more serious when it comes to that. Is there a balance between trying to keep it sort of sporty for the folks that are sort of racing it versus the kind of friendly for those people that are trying to just complete that and say, hey, I did a sprint or I did an Olympic? Is that, how do you look at that? I mean, again, I'm blown away by the logistics on this whole thing, just between, like you said, permitting, trying to make it safe and fun, try to keep the city happy, and then try to have a course that people are going to, both sides of the equation are going to be happy about. How does that kind of factor in?
I mean, I'll say all the competitive athletes that's, if they act like they want a really hilly, challenging course, they can, that is such a small percentage.
Yeah.
Even if they say it,
Yeah.
it is a small percentage. Most people want a flat and fast course.
Really?
Period. Yes.
Huh.
That's
Because they get
Yes.
PRs and they can get all that.
That is
good
what
stuff.
they want.
Yeah.
I mean, and they recover faster. I
Yep.
mean,
Yeah.
you
They can do
I
more
mean,
races.
There's some bragging rights when you've done something big. So if you can have some
Yeah.
kind of iconic hill, but it has to be really cool.
Yeah.
It has to be something. It's a big deal, but it will turn a lot of people away. So you have to have a lot really going for you to pull something like that off.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, back to what Joe said. We want an enjoyable, safe route. But in reality, we have to work with what we have.
Yeah.
So, and these venues change, guys. I mean, this is not like, oh, we found the perfect venue for this race. I mean, there's constant change. Even in state parks, there's changes.
Oh yeah.
Well, construction alone. I mean, I went for a ride on
they
Sunday.
repave, they decide to add a bike lane, but then they do
Yeah.
the strip between the bike lane and the road, and you're like, well, how are we going to manage that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a real thing. I mean, how many roads out here in Williamson County, if you're biking out here, do you
Yep.
run into the rumble strips?
Yesterday.
Well, you can manage that as an individual at training. Put that into your race course.
Now you got
That's
people
lovely.
passing people and throws
Yes.
them
Yeah.
off.
Oh, and then just construction
It's a
alone. I
real
mean,
thing. Yeah.
almost every city in the United States has some level of construction going on.
Right.
Where on, maybe in February everything was great. It shows to May, June, July, and all of a sudden, you've
Or
got.
it's-
And
supposed
we're
to be
also not
finished
the
in time,
we're also not the only people utilizing these venues.
Uh-huh.
In most cases, we're the small player in town, and so even at the small rural races that we do in state parks, there's other people that are utilizing those parks for other things that we have to coordinate with, and we're sharing a space with them. And
Yep.
so we've got to make it so that everybody's happy. Park's happy, we're happy, the city's happy, everybody, and it's this whole puzzle piece game that's quite enjoyable on one hand, but it's also very stressful on the other hand.
Yeah, but I'm assuming, obviously, you guys done this for a few years, and once it pulls off and people start coming in and you see people finishing their races and they're like, wow, that was awesome. And, that's got to be a great payoff, right? I mean,
That's why we're sitting here.
yeah.
I mean,
We
why
could have
else-
walked away a long time ago.
What else would we
It's not
do
that
here?
corporate money.
We're not.
benefits
Yeah,
are
we don't have the
outstanding.
corporate cushion anymore. We're,
U.S. Steel, triathlon
yeah,
races,
it's the
pretty
finish line. I mean,
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
didn't see that finish line, we would not be sitting here today.
cool. Yeah. And it is, part of the word magic. There is something magical when you see people that just finish it for the first time, and it's like, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do this, and a friend talked me into it or whatever, and all of a sudden, they finish it, they get that, and say, that's a
getting
capable
people
thing.
across that first line, the finish line, the first time, and getting them hooked into the sport is awesome.
Yeah.
It's just to see them accomplish that, have their families there to see them accomplish it. It's all fantastic.
Oh yeah,
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
and especially when people bring a friend with them
Yes.
and rope them into this thing and then
Yeah.
keep them into this thing. That's like the best to me.
Yeah. We'd get a lot of people started with relays. Well, I can't do this, I can't do that. So we put a relay teams together and have the relays go out there, and then they're like, I could do the whole thing. I could do that whole thing
It's
myself.
such an-
So the next year you get them hooked in to do it themselves.
Yeah.
It's such an underrated relay is one thing that I feel like we need to do a better job
Yeah.
of gaining exposure that's an
Yeah.
option for
Yeah.
people. Because the relay participation in our events is nowhere near where I think it should be.
Yeah.
It's so I don't know, it's probably 5% of our numbers are relay participants.
Wow.
And I think it should be a whole lot more than that.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the barriers I think that we could break down to getting into the sport and staying in the sport is certainly being able to share that experience with teammates. And then, if you're not a swimmer, if you're not comfortable in the water, why not just do the bike part or just do the run part? It'd be
Totally.
great.
Yeah, and if you look at companies like Ragnar and others, it's a great bonding experience. You know, I've done a few Ragnar events where people I don't even know, right? There was like my wife's work friends, right? And I show up in a van because she made me go. And, you know, when you're done, you're like, you know, you just accomplish something kind of cool, right? So, relays are also, from a social perspective, a really cool thing to amp up. I love the idea. I think, even if for people that do triathlons, to be able to just participate in a relay once in a while would be great. I'd love to be able to say, hey, give me the bike portion. I'll just hammer the living crap out of it. If somebody else wants to swim and somebody else wants to run, why not?
I've done it for sure. I mean, especially since I don't get in the water that much, don't take the time to go practice to swim. I will always jump in if someone needs a relay person. Let me do the bike or the run. I'm in.
Yeah.
Cool.
Can always do it.
So then, as we move through the triathlon years, so what happened last year? It all blew up with COVID. So
What was last year?
that was last year, wasn't it? It felt like it was about 5 years ago now, but at this point,
It was a nightmare.
Yeah,
let's just put it that way.
And honestly, it's this year is,
we're in that zone.
We're
as
still
well.
in the zone.
Yeah. We're still in that cancel, whether you're on, whether you're off. I mean, it's frustrating for the athletes. I can't imagine for you as race directors, the stress level of
2021, and we'll get into our merger and what that partnership looks like, but it's a year of it's a survival year, essentially. Like we are, and every race company is like this. Let's get through 2021 as best we can and survive it, because on 2022 we're going to be crushing it. So if we can survive 2021 with everything that's been dealt with us because of 2020 and carrying over lots of deferred revenue and things like that, just getting races off the ground, doing them in a way where we can safely produce them, have good experience, break even as much as possible, then we're going to be set up pretty positively moving forward.
For 2020.
But this is a survival year.
Yeah.
So when 2020 hit, I mean, was it February? Just kind of walk us through that. I mean, the rut row moment happened when? I mean, I opened this shop in February, and then 4 weeks later we got to close it. Yay! Yeah. So trust me, I feel your pain. Right. It's nothing like launching and then go, well, that was fun, and then hunker down. When was it? Around January, February, when you were going, okay, this is this, or was it earlier than that? Yeah.
Oh no, it was later.
Oh, it was later.
Yeah. So we didn't. We didn't realize that it was about to go down. What was going down in January, February? No way. March. So our race was scheduled for the 14th. So on March 12th, we had our St. Patrick's Day Music City half 10K and 5K scheduled for the 14th, and on the 12th we were doing packet pickup at Fleet Feet.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
No.
Because we were still, of course, everything had just started going down, getting public. It's like, are we having this race? And we'd seen every day things start getting canceled. Of course, I'm communicating with the city, and it's like, what do we do? What do we do? And I guess, do we go ahead and have packet pickup?
Yeah.
It was extraordinarily awkward. So while we're at packet pickup on Thursday, I get a call from the city. It's like, look, we're having to pull all events.
Oh.
So I've had 200 people pick up packets or whatever, and but I also didn't want to pull the plug if they were going to say, we're outdoors, let's go ahead and do this. We had obviously purchased everything. All the money spent. We're there, and I had to go send out a message that afternoon on Thursday for this race on Saturday. Of course, we have people are coming to Nashville for St. Patrick's celebration. Yeah. So it's not just local runners. It's people from all over the place that have traveled in. And so we kicked it off with an event. I mean, like, we hit it with an event scheduled, paid for, done, 1,300 people registered. And that was the beginning. So for us, that race eventually we changed it to virtual. We scheduled a date in October to try to do live racing, which, as we all know, everybody tried to do that. And we, over the course of about 6 weeks, knew this is not going to happen. It changed to a virtual run. We were able to host 2 triathlons and then another running event in November. We hosted 2 triathlons under COVID protocol in
Wow. Okay.
really rural, again, a state park, our 2 oldest triathlons in Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah, it was completely different than
And when were
anything
those?
we've ever
What
done
months?
before. So, sorry.
What months were those?
So it was July and August.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a limited crowd of people,
Mhm.
super spread out, completely different. Drive-through packet pickup.
Yeah.
Think some of the things we'll actually still be doing this year. So no post-race awards, no party. People have to pick up their awards at a local retailer. It was just completely different, but we were able to,
To have
a
3
couple.
events.
Yeah, obviously with St. Patty's Day being that close, like the refund policy and all that was, not going to happen, right? Because you're saying stuff was purchased. One of the things that I think one of the critiques that Ironman had was this sort of they were trying to put on events in 2020, and some would say, and I'm not saying they would, but some say that they wait until after sort of the refunds were not available. Was that obviously you're trying to maintain a company and maintain a business, and you've put energy, time, and sometimes permitting costs and other those. I mean, when you're going through that for 2020, was that a really difficult sort of factor to try to figure out how to do? I mean, or are you guys like, yeah, idiot? Like, is that? I mean, how far in advance did you have to try to cancel it and try to again maintain sort of staying alive as a company, but not pissing off like everybody that tried to register? Was that it? Am I reliving stuff? Do you
I
guys
see the way you're looking at me. I guess I'll take this.
Yeah, how much hope did you have through that, as the year went on that you were going to be able to put an event on?
So if we'll be transparent here. If we were to refund everybody for all of our races that came in, we would not be sitting here today. We would be working here with you guys probably. We would be looking for a job.
How good are you at smoothies? I'm just asking.
So we were forced into that because the business models of our 2 businesses at the time are a little different than a lot of other race companies, where it might just be like a nonprofit putting on a race, and it's not kind of they don't have overhead and all that stuff. So it's just a different dynamic. And that's kind of what started our communication with where we are today and as one company. But we started talking very early on in the process in March, right after her race got canceled, so that we could coordinate with one another on our messaging of this, so that one of us wasn't going one direction and the other one was going another way, and it looked awkward to the public. So we tried to do things as timely as possible, understanding that we wanted to have races, but what was the realistic chance of doing those races? And at some point, we just had to make the call, you know what, we don't feel comfortable even trying anymore. So I forget when it was, but there was a time where we just pulled the plug on everything Tennessee. Anything Tennessee and Kentucky, we pulled the plug on, and we communicated that, knowing that Alabama still had some availability to do some things down in Alabama. So that's how we operated, and we moved all of the racers over into the deferred status and moved them over and gave them the option to race in 2021 or 2022.
Okay.
And with the merger also, we are also giving them the opportunity to defer into any of our events for this year.
Oh, nice.
So you're not locked into that one race you did. So now there's a much larger portfolio of races that people can choose from. So as of now, we've had no issues. There's lots of people that are choosing different races and kind of inserting them in different spots. But yeah, it's nearly 1,000 racers that we had to move over to this year from last year's events that we did. We're making it work.
We're making it work.
So I mean, I had a race in California that was canceled because I was going to fly back to California where, wife and I spent 20 years there. It was going to be a great trail run, and we got the note. And it's a smaller company that was putting it on, and they said, look, we've already paid for permitting and everything. We can't take it back, so we're sorry we can't do refunds. And I think that transparency helped quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't as if, I mean, we get it. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount of money to attend this race, and
we all own small businesses, so we kind of get that. But I think the general public doesn't understand that there's a lot of costs involved, that there's a lot of expenditure that happens, regardless if the race goes on or not.
Yeah,
and it's not like the money that just comes in, goes in your pocket, and then you get in your Range Rover and you take off and everything's great. It's not that way at all. And I think the transparency certainly helps.
Yeah, because like I said, you guys were working with folks months in advance to try to put these things on, and that costs money and time and permitting and all that, and that money just can't come back.
Right.
So,
That's right.
And something this year that we've done is normally we would open up registrations in, let's just say, November the year before.
Yeah.
And we kind of open up all of our events in November. Many times, not every event had received all the necessary approvals or permits come November the year before, but we're just kind of under the assumption that it'll all be okay.
yeah.
And now we're operating under, we've got to have everything in place
Everything's
before
gotta
we
be
open
inked.
registration, because we
Yeah.
don't want to run into another situation like we did in 2020 where we're collecting lots of registrations and then we'd have no event.
Yeah.
So,
But
new
you
protocol.
survived it, so good news, right?
Survived.
So,
We're here.
Yeah,
We're here.
So the conversations then evolved more around to combining your forces from the separate entities. So how did that come about?
I think I initially pitched an idea to her,
Yeah.
I wonder what she's going to say to this. And so she responded in a positive way, and it just kind of took off from there. So I don't think we would be here had COVID not happened. Maybe we would, but COVID kind of sped the process up,
Sure.
I think,
Yeah.
where Faye and I work really well together. We have complementary ways of doing business. Technically, we call her the chief operating officer. We call myself the chief growth officer, where Faye is the engineering background. She's got 30 years of experience producing the biggest races in America. She's as good as they come when it comes to putting on a race and all the logistics and operations behind that. Nobody better. I'm good at that, but I don't love that. Okay. I love the sales and marketing side of getting people enthusiastic about coming to races and doing races and things like that, and trying to make a lot of money for the business. And so we just aligned really well in that. And obviously both here in Nashville, my company didn't have a lot of overhead. We don't have office space. We didn't have equipment. We didn't have all that stuff, where Team Magic has all that stuff. So it's kind of an easy, natural progression. And so what started as just kind of a little, hey, maybe we should do more together, turned into maybe we should become business partners, to maybe we should just go all in on this whole big picture idea that we have, which is other lines of businesses that we're going to eventually kind of get rolling out. But here we are today.
Yeah. So I think the timing of it, so I have a business partner that started Team Magic. So Teresa Bynum founded Team Magic, and then she's, over the past few years, she's been slowly exiting, cutting back on her time involved, but has been still a 50% owner. She brought me in 95 as a part owner. I didn't go full time with Team Magic until 2002. So, but she had been doing this since the late 80s. So this became her, time to kind of ease back. And when COVID hit, it's just like, maybe this is the time. And then we started this conversation at the same time. So it was it would have been more difficult for us to do it if you've got, Teresa and I are still 50% business partners. But with her willing to exit and feeling the right time for her to exit, that also lent itself to this partnership. And Joe put it, he put it very well. We complement each other. And having the races, our races, we were competition in a small area. I mean, we were just flat out competition, even though we've always been friendly and we try to work around our calendars. It's really hard to work around each other's calendars.
It's the same pool of athletes. Yeah.
With all the other calendars going on. So it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, from that perspective too.
So obviously there were some negative things that happened because of COVID, completely sort of. And the good news that came of it is you guys, like you said, you came together, and it sounds like it maybe. Are there other efficiencies that you found, or there was things that sort of forced you to think differently or better that came out of this as well? Is there, some level of positive sort of, hey, it taught us to be this, or it taught us, like, especially on the setup, you're smiling because, or it was just, you're doing this like, the Matrix, or you're just trying to figure out how to dodge the bullets. But was there some lean, iron kind of, hardens iron kind of thing. Is there some lean things that came out of this?
Yeah, for sure. The reason I started laughing is when Joe and I first started meeting and talking about working together. I said, well, the first thing we're going to do is change the name of the company to Basic Racing. And he said, I'm not sure if I like that. I said, well, that's what I've done this year.
Yeah.
It was so different and a bit refreshing, honestly.
Yeah.
Although I love big atmosphere. Don't get me wrong. I love everything. I love the celebration. I love the beer afterwards. I love, people that enjoy the food tent.
Yep.
I get all that, but we were just basic racing. I mean, very limited spectators, and I also love the spectators, by the way. So I'm not saying I don't like all of that, but that's what we had to do. Yeah, it was just so simple. Comparatively. So what I think obviously I don't want to be there, but I think what we learned is there is a way to just get back to, okay, what is basic racing all about, and where are we really spending our time? Yeah. What's the best way to spend our time? So yes, definitely finding efficiencies. And I think 2021 is that step. We were basic racing in 2020. 2021 is how can we still have atmosphere, but we still have to run really pretty, basic compared to past years. So we're going to learn a lot about being efficient because we have to survive for one thing. Yeah. But we also need to produce a good experience. I mean, these people are paying to come do a triathlon. They understand it's going to be different. Yeah. We have a run next weekend, that I say threw together. That doesn't mean it's, it's halfway done. It just means it was the last minute, like, hey, we got permission to have events now. Let's have a run. We couldn't do St. Pat's. Let's do a run in Nashville. And people are going to have to wear a mask when they come to the start line. We can't have food or they're hanging out at a food tent afterwards. So it's going to be different, but we're still going to give them a great experience. They're still going to walk away with some things that they can remember the race other than just the run part of it. So, so we are learning how to do those things, provide an experience more efficiently for sure.
Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think that's the atmosphere of the race is a huge deal, but I think it could be done in a way that's a little more tight and not so extravagant in ways that we're wasting a lot of time and energy and money on, but we can still produce that same high quality level of product just with less to it.
Well, and I like the idea that you strip down to the essence, right? And then it's sort of like you get back to the base. It feels like a Rocky movie or something. Like you guys had to go out in the snow and like pick up a log and run through the snow in a log, but lift up rocks kind of deal. But it kind of, to a certain extent, it's true, right? Is to get down to sort of what the essence of racing is, and then build the fun stuff around that. But that's not out of adversity. At least some little bit of a phoenix came out of that, which is let's figure out why we're doing these things to begin with, and then we can add the cool stuff around it. Just keep the beer. That's all I ask.
So, we will.
We will. So what kind of experiences are the athletes, what are you able to actually do, like food-wise or beer-wise afterwards? Is that still a possibility that you'll be able to hand somebody a plate of food and have them walk, 100 yards down the road and, mark off a spot for them? Or is that still more pushed out to the end of the year, or 22 maybe, that you'll get back to that? How are we inching forward to get back to that great experience?
I think we are getting back to that sooner rather than later. Okay. Now, it might be more of those grassroots rural courses that are able to do more of that versus a downtown metropolitan venue. Yeah. So right now we're operating as if we're pretty bare bones at this point until we're told otherwise. Because we're just now, it's almost been like a floodgate of approvals this last month that we've had, where we had no approvals about a month ago to do anything, and now we have it all at once. So we're operating as if we cannot do a lot of that stuff right now, but if we can, we're going to do it. Okay. Do it in a way that we feel comfortable with doing it. So I don't know. I don't want to give you a date, but we feel pretty good that come late summer, probably, we'll start to see more of post-race vibes happening. Yeah. And then hopefully in the fall, even more so than that. And then, 2022, back to normal, hopefully. Whatever normal is,
whatever that looks like at that point.
Yeah. These early races. So we have this race in April, the run in April 17th. And then there is the next one is, early June. So we have a triathlon June in Tri-Louisville. That's an urban environment. Mm-hmm. End of June is Chattanooga, urban environment. The next one in July we were able to have last year on July 10th. That's in Guntersville, Alabama. Again, it's in the city, but it's a rural area, and it's very it's not a place where you would have a lot of spectators. It's on a greenway that it's very manageable in terms of crowd control. And I see these first races being very much like what we did with that race last year. It's grab and go food. There's food, but we need you to grab it, and get out.
Yeah. Get out. No
go do your
lingering in
thing.
the
Go to
tent.
your car. You're going to pick up your awards somewhere else, which it works out fine because then they go to a retailer and do that, and it's a little bit inconvenient for the racer, but they understand. It's the way. It's just those are just the awards. In terms of it looking any differently, I mean, I think on the front end, expos will look different. I think early we might see that grow later. I'm trying to think of everything you think of with atmosphere with a race. I don't think we can do that at Louisville. Chattanooga, I'm not sure how much we can do that. We might be able to do it and just have a limited thing and spread out.
Yeah.
It's all about gathering. I mean, so when we get approval for an event in Nashville right now, you have to go to the Metro Public Health, and it's all about gathering. And as soon as you say food or beer, that changes everything. Because that people have a mask off and they start talking, and they forget about COVID.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they forget about transmission because you relax.
Yeah.
So I think we're going with that until further notice.
Yeah.
I think the expo area is one thing that we've kind of forgotten about, because that's where you find all those new products that you try on race day.
Yeah.
Right? That you're not supposed to.
You're supposed to, right?
But you try them anyway.
It's
That's all this cool stuff.
And that's got a new shoe? What are you talking about?
Let me try that.
Yeah, that tri-helmet.
New nutrition? Sure.
Sure, why not?
Try it. But I always enjoy the expo areas. That's where you find some new stuff. You pick up any last minute tubes, tires, anything that you forgot left back at the house.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite race is there a in your stable of races, there must be, I'm not telling you to pick a favorite child, but I sort of am. Like,
you
is
are.
there a
Yeah,
favorite
you are,
child
totally.
that, I'll tell you my favorite child right up front. No, I'm kidding. Is there one that you're kind of looking forward to? Like, this was either because, like, if River Bluff was the first one you did, and that's sort of a special child for you to really get back to normalcy on that one, is there a particular race that you're looking forward to? Not that anything's less or more than the other, but is there a particular one that you're excited about?
Yeah.
Well, how many do you have? I mean, now that you've combined forces, right? How many events do you have? Because it looks like you've got quite a few.
I think we have 11 currently, with maybe another one to add later that we can talk about at some other point. But I think we got 11 in the arsenal right now.
Right.
Okay.
And they're mostly triathlons, but you got a couple running events?
All but 3.
Okay.
We have a side gig, the NAI thing, as a 12th event, but that's different. We have one managed event. We do.
Okay, you got to pick a favorite child.
In terms of
favorite child.
So now,
I don't have, and this is a cheesy answer, but I'm literally just she had the luxury of producing a couple of races last year.
Yeah.
I haven't done a race since September of 2019.
Got it.
So I'm just desperate to get out there and actually put on an event.
Yeah.
So I truly just give me whatever I can take, and I'll take it. And so I'm super excited actually about April 17th.
Yeah.
We have our Music City Half Marathon, and that one right now is at top of mind for me. And I'm so excited to get back to racing because
that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm rusty.
Yeah.
I'm rusty, and I'm ready to knock off that rust. So that's for me.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I guess it would be, if I look further into the year, I get excited about our race that's in Gulf Shores. That's hosted down at the Hangout, which is a popular location for a lot of people now. We were the first event that was ever held at the Hangout, by the way. And I know there's this little thing called the Hangout Music Festival now. Right. But so we were their first event, and I'm very passionate about that race. It's always been, until now, our last triathlon of the year. And it's it's a great time for my staff. It's a fantastic venue. It's got everything. You've got a golf swim, you've got a great flat bike course, you've got a flat run course, you've got the party afterwards. Everybody's happy at the beach, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we couldn't have that last year, even though we had a couple races in Alabama and rural areas. We couldn't do that because that's very similar to being in downtown Nashville, or downtown Louisville, or downtown Chattanooga. You can't control the public, influx. There was no way to keep that separate.
Yeah.
So I think I'm excited about that because I see that as hopefully more back to what we're used to.
Yeah.
and maybe it will still look different this year. I think that's just something I really missed last year. I missed that race because it was like a culmination. It's always that feel-good race for me.
Yeah. And then you can look back on the year and go, okay.
It's a reflection race,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And it's also, I'll agree with that one too, because I think when we merged, there's a lot of like signature events like the Music City Triathlon and Chattanooga Waterfront that Team Magic has put on. That's really cool to be now a part of. But Alabama Coastal, or that race, and just having a Gulf swim, the quintessential type of triathlon, like that's cool. Like not many people have the luxury of being able to put that kind of an event on. And to now be a part of that, that's super cool to me.
I'm looking forward to that one because I haven't swam down in the coast. Absolutely, I'm going to come down for that for sure. I've swam on both coasts, but I haven't.
When is that
Gulf
one?
Coast, so
Generally,
September.
Okay, yeah, that'd be a
11th,
fun one.
is that right?
put it
Road
on the
trip.
calendar. Yep.
It's always the Saturday after Labor Day, so it's easy to remember.
Oh, good.
Great.
Okay. Well, we'll put that on. That's got to be on the calendar. I got to come down and I got to swim in the Gulf Coast.
Okay, so someone listening to this, they're excited about the idea of triathlon. How we talked about relays before. We've talked about sort of how to make the water safer. If someone's listening and they're tri-curious,
Yes.
how does what would you recommend how they get started? What would be the kind of first 2 or 3 things? So they just sometimes, like for me, I have to sign up for something that scares the crap out of me. So I get myself up in the morning. Do you recommend that? Like just sign up for something and kind of commit yourself, or how would you say somebody that's getting kind of geared up and excited about the idea of these things? How do you get them into triathlons? What's your recommendation?
So I think there's almost like a life cycle when it comes to triathlon. And usually, and this is how I started, is you find a race and you just sign up for that race. And you go all in on that race. And you know nothing else beyond that one event. You don't know the community side of things or the retail side of it. You just know the race. So that's where I believe the first thing you should do is just find you a race, get involved in that race, and go tackle it. And then hopefully once you tackle that race, then you can get connected with other people. Maybe there's some friends, maybe a tri club invites you to come join them on a ride or something, and you learn about the recovery lounge and other kind of retailers out there that service that community. And then you kind of get stuck in the sport. You get locked in and you start doing more. But for me, I think just find you a race, which is very easy to find nowadays. Just Google. That's what I did. Yeah. Google triathlon Tennessee, and up pops everything, or wherever you live. And just jump in. That's my suggestion. And then if you want to get better, reach out to Tom or other people and go from there. But there's so many resources out there that it's hard to navigate all that. But really, if you just splash in with one race, then if you splash in and go all in on it, then you can really find all the tools to be successful to stay within the sport.
Yeah, and we want to try to focus a lot on the fact that triathlon is more than just an Ironman. It's not a 140.6 distance race. It's all about the swim, the bike, the run. And I think people have gotten way focused on this long distance stuff, and it scares everybody, and that's not for everybody. And there's so much fun to be had on the sprint and Olympic distance, and even the ones that aren't the qualified sprint or Olympic, that just basically based on the surroundings changes that. So you get super sprints, you get different distances. All the short course style racing is so much fun. I mean, you can knock it out and go home and have lunch type of thing, right? So it's not like you have to...
This is my jam right here. What you're speaking right here is, I love to hear it. Short course racing is not a crime, okay?
Yes.
And I see the bumper sticker.
Here. Can we let's make that bumper sticker.
It's a good one.
Should. Absolutely.
But it's, you're right. Like, I think people, when they get into the sport, they think of it as an Ironman. Everything's an Ironman. And I think it's much cooler to be able to race fast and hard and often, like race often, race local and race often. Yeah. And that's where we come into play and the other event organizers around town.
And the race local thing is key as well. Part of the reason I ended up in this area, in this region, is for the local races, to be able to do those. Mm-hmm. I've done everything all the way out to the ultras. I love every distance of racing, but everyone seems to think that I'm just doing the long distance stuff now, the multi-day crazy stuff, and it's not the case. I love the short stuff, and I'm trying to get athletes more engaged in that end, because I think we get more people into the sport. And really, that's what we want. We want to grow the sport as much as possible and kind of get everybody in here. And this is one of those barriers to entry that we keep talking about, is the distances scare the heck out of people. Let's get them in there. Let's get them short course racing on relays, where it's just that community where we get together with triathletes and they learn that we talk about everything. Like there's no topic that's off the limits, that we'll just share everything that's out there. And that's something that we need to work with, and I'm looking forward to.
Triathlon needs to be rebranded as a lifestyle sport.
Yes.
Instead of a bucket list sport.
Yes.
This should be a sport that you do for your entire life. And to do short course racing and to not have it monopolize your time with your whole life is training and thinking about travel. No, don't do that. Have it be a piece of your life that complements everything else going on. And that's where I think we just need to rebrand what the sport is.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect, or one of the barriers that we see, is you don't need a $1,200 wetsuit. You don't need a $10,000 bike. You don't have to have 6 pairs of shoes, which is pretty much, just in my closet. So I'm not gonna lie.
Me too.
But no, that's not. I think there's, it's funny because I go on Facebook sites and people talk about triathlon all the time, and they're like, look, if you've got a bike that works, it doesn't have to have clipless pedals. You don't have to have a high-end wetsuit. There are places you can rent wetsuits. Or you don't need one, or you can buy a low-end used one without having to invest a lot of money. Do you see the challenge with that sometimes, is people think, oh, well, I have to buy all these things, where in fact you don't, right? Especially for
I think you do see that. I think, earlier you asked the question, how have things changed over time? Well, when I first started not just organizing races, but racing myself, no one was talking about Ironman.
Yeah.
I did my first triathlon in 1991. Mm-hmm. No one was talking about Ironman.
Yeah.
Everybody doing an Olympic race was the jam.
Yeah.
And I think that because there weren't that many sprints then, there were a lot of near Olympic, distance races. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't all that. And I think the thing that's changed over time is Ironman exploded, and people see it on television, and they feel like if they're not doing that, they're not doing a real triathlon. And so it's the same thing with the equipment.
Yeah.
Well, the guy at work, he just told me he bought this $5,000 bike, and he's bragging about his wetsuit. Oh, I can't do that kind of sport.
Exactly.
And that's the same thing has happened. It's like you're either doing Ironman or you're not doing anything. You're either using the fancy stuff, and that is today. And it's because they hear it. They hear it at wherever they congregate. Whether it's at work or other social places. And it's just like Joe said, it needs to be a rebranding, and there's nothing more refreshing than hearing a coach tell you, say, we need to get back to some local racing and realize, and Joe saying lifestyle sport, all these words I'm hearing are just like total music to my ears. Yeah. Because it's just so true, and I think that takes the intimidation away. Yeah. And let's get the word out there. You just need to, and we tell people this all the time. If someone can pick a race and contact us, they'll ask us those questions, and we can direct them to coaches that aren't going to push them towards Ironman. If they want to do that eventually, fantastic. I'm not anti-Ironman.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's great.
But it doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all. It doesn't need to be a bucket list thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I know when, a night before a triathlon, I'm terrible, right? I'm in my own head, right? I'm getting ready for the swim, and I always think everyone looks like, the Ironman pros, right? So when I show up to the race, it's all going to be 6% body fat, leaned out people that are going to be cranking it, and you show up to the races and they're human beings. They're like, it's like all shapes and sizes.
It's fantastic.
People having a good time. And, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I got Jan Frodeno's going to be behind me. Go look him up, and it's going to be like, he's going to, and I got Olympic swimmers, and they're not, they're people having fun. And I think that's what so the key lesson maybe for 2021 and going into 2022, now that we've stripped all this down, is just go have fun, right? Go find a local race, get involved, and just give it a try and have a good day.
Basic racing, right?
Basic racing.
Maybe we just rebranded ourselves.
Basic racing.
You've heard it here, folks.
That's your tagline. That's your tagline.
Where you come to have
Team
fun.
Magic,
I don't know.
Tom and I only take 10% off the top. It's a modest fee, we think. It's something we do.
Yeah. So this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with you and getting the stuff out here. Hopefully we'll have you on again maybe later in the year, and we can get some more updates on how things are going and all that. But
Sounds
thank
great.
you so much.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed it.
It's
Yeah.
great to
Thanks for
have
the
you.
opportunity. It's been
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, it's awesome. So, Kenny,
Yeah.
on to the next
wonderful.
one.
Thanks.